was a reduction, considerable reduction of the major markets, be this for cereal, maize, or rice. And then when this situation occurred, everybody forgot about agriculture again. And then 2010, 2011, because you have to look at the crop years, 2010, 2011, this usually starts in July or sometimes in October for some products. But when now that we have reached some stable, relative stability, then there were climate problems, and they've come from this side, to my right, Central Asia, Russia, Ukraine. There were severe droughts, as you remember, and they considerably reduced the wheat production in Russia as well as Ukraine. Russia probably had its worst possible crop in 40 years, and 40 years, this is prior to the USSR, so the figures were probably not very accurate, but it is one of the lowest crops that was ever taken in these countries, in Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan in 2009 to 10. Represented 1/3 of the world exports, and we believe that there will be a shortfall of some 20 million tons for this crop year. Then we need to consider the increasing demand due to the improvement of the situation formulated by a number of countries, and we can also add to the situation a number of programs put into place in the United States of processing of some of the crops, bioenergy problems, which is taking away some 100 million tons every year in the United States. And again, the surge of crop prices, especially for wheat in July and August, and this was characterized by an embargo for Russian products, for Ukraine products, and also in September and October, when the U.S. crops of corn and soy appeared less promising. They also were concerned by this. Now, I gave you some figures, some statistics. This simply means that for Europe, and I'm not saying that Morocco is far removed from Europe, quite the opposite, but the price of wheat fell from $120 a ton in July, August, and there has been an increase. It's now $220. And so, as usual, we started looking into these agricultural situations, the need to start a coordinated program for world agriculture, and in the FAO summit in November 2009. So this is 1 year ago. Not many people participated. Only 2 heads of state had participated. Berlusconi, because this enabled him not to present himself to the court in Milan. But there was no other head of state, major head of state. So we understood that agriculture had fallen back to the secondary issues that were being discussed. And then at the G20 summit in France next year, the agricultural markets will be discussed again. This is one of the main items on the agenda, and speculation will be much discussed, especially the negative influence of speculation. So I believe that we should look into the situation and wonder why these price surges occurred in 2008 and 2010. We need to remember one event. At the end of the 20th century, agricultural prices were very depressed. Most of you are not active in the agricultural circles, but maybe you didn't realize this, but at the end of the 20th century, the inflation-corrected figures for agricultural prices reached levels which were extremely low, probably the lowest of the 20th century. Since the prices were depressed and that there were excess crops, the policies put into place were policies of destructuring of agricultural existing policies. And in Europe, the common agricultural policy was being amended, and especially in developing countries, except some countries such as India, which was in a position to resist to the strict adjustment of these structural adjustment dictated by Washington. Well, many other countries had to give up to their wheat offices or the systems that they had put into place in order to be able to guarantee fixed prices to the producers. And everybody said, well, you will see once the market is opened up, the situation will improve, and you will be able to feed all the consumers. As to the farmers, they don't vote anyhow. This is my own comment, but that was part of the reasoning. And that was the period or the time when a number of well-intended people said, well, our agricultural systems are much too intense, it's going to be a dead end, we have to refuse biotechnologies. I myself come from a country which totally banned genetically modified substances, but in another country such as Germany, the Minister of Agriculture, Mrs. Renate Künast, was also the leader of the Green Party, and her only dream was that of bringing the German agriculture to the bioagricultural system, which is usually entails a reduction of production. But again, this was in a situation where crops were still abundant. So for 10 or 15 years, we participated in a, well, I wouldn't call it a destructuring, but perhaps a reduction of the idea of agricultural productivity, especially in a country such as France. Agricultural productivity was almost a four-letter word. So, and at the same time, the demand for these products increased due to the demographic development and due to economic growth also. A number of developing countries and emerging countries were able to access richer food models, and this of course expressed itself in a higher consumption of animal products. Now luckily this is not the case of our Indian friends who are theoretically vegetarian. This is theoretical, I'm saying. It's not always the situation, but especially not during lunches here. But it's the situation of a country such as China. The Chinese population has a better standard of living and has been able to increase their food levels, their food intake, especially their meat intake. And China is now the first importer of soy, with a development of its imports. And demand also increased in unexpected fields, which can find an explanation in the new field of biofuels. They didn't entail the surge of 2008, but they did contribute to it, and for a very symbolic product, because the majority of these biofuels is still sugarcane, which is understandable for Brazil, but this is the American biofuel program, which is based on cereals, especially corn. In fact, the world production is 750 tons, and the US production is 350. The use of corn for biofuel is 100,000 tons. So in fact, there is the use of corn, of US corn for biofuel is higher than the availability of US corn for export. So in short, this was a situation when there was a shortening in the offer and whilst the demand was increasing. And at the time, speculation was mentioned, of course. Now, speculation is a very, not a politically correct word, but it is true that for agriculture, just as for the raw materials in general, there were a number of bankers, or amongst the bankers in this room, where a number of you suddenly became interested in commodities, raw materials. They became a new type, a new class for investment, with investments based on indexes or hedge funds, and indeed this added a lot of noise to the markets. However, I don't believe that we can simply attack speculation. Speculation can increase, can amplify a movement, it can add volatility, but it is not speculation at the very basis of the problem. If there hadn't been any major fires in Russia, the prices wouldn't have increased the same way. Now, I usually compare the situation. I usually say that speculation is really like the froth on a wave. When there's a lot of wind, you'll see it, and once, but when there is a tempest, you don't make the difference. And when the sea is still, you don't make the difference either. You don't see the foam anymore. It's the wave that entails the foam, and not the foam that entails the wave. The same goes for agricultural issues. For some products, we have markets, derivative markets, and the major markets in Chicago for wheat, maize, soy, etc. But there are also products for which there are no derivative markets. For rice, for instance, there is the rice is for Bangkok, and there is no tool, there is no specific speculation on rice other than producers, consumers. But the price increase in rice was even higher than that for wheat, and you may recall what happened in the field of dairy products in Europe. For the time being, there is no derivative market either for butter, and in spite of that, the markets really surged. Now, rather than pointing our finger to speculation, we should simply say that, and this is my own thesis, saying that the markets can really use a purpose, and markets also deliver a message. When the house is on fire and the dogs bark, well, you can always shoot your dog, but the house is still going to be on fire. Now, the dogs did bark on our markets in 2010, telling us that, look what's happening. Look at this need, the